Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. As always, make sure you're subscribed to get notified of the latest episodes. I'm Jim Morrison, and today we have Joan Trice, our CEO, and Jody Bishop, the newly elected president of the Appraisal Institute. We'll be discussing his plans for his term and the latest with the Appraisal Institute. Joan, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, and welcome, Jody. I don't think we've ever met in person, but it might scare you a little bit. I know you by reputation, and I think my brother Lee knows you through the Appraisal Institute. I think LDAC maybe. Back in the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, don't hold that against me either.
Well, I actually met you, Joan, at your event in Charleston about 4 years ago or so.
Well, my apologies, because I don't remember the several hundred people I meet at a time at each of my events, but that's no doubt the best part of the event. I just got to do a better job of remembering everybody.
No. I think it's actually a good thing that I didn't do something to make you remember me, because normally you remember those things that aren't so good about somebody casually that you've met. So
there is a lot of truth to that statement for sure. So you are the newly elected president of the Appraisal Institute. Congratulations. And
well,
I'm sure that you have sort of your list of initiatives that you want to launch, and then I have no doubt that the Appraisal Institute has a strategic plan, and those two things, I'm sure, mesh together. Why don't we talk about that? Let's lead off with the Institute's strategic plan for this coming year.
Right, and this is super exciting for me and for our board and us as an organization. We had been on a strategic planning model process. It was quite protracted for several reasons that I don't want to go into, but at long last, the board got together in May. It's one of our first in-person board meetings as COVID-19 kind of alleviated a little bit back in May. And we spent nearly the entire meeting going through a strategic planning process. And it was a true collaborative effort, because we had our board there, we had our committee chairs in place there. We had a lot of surveying of membership, both within the appraisal organization, and then we also did some surveying outside of our organization. So it was the information that we gathered and assembled to pour over was a true blending of not just the leadership at the top and not just membership at the bottom. It was a true collaborative effort. We hired a consultant to lead us through the process, so it wasn't led by the executive team. And it wasn't led by the board of directors. So there was a lot of buy-in, because it wasn't the executive team pushing it on the board. It wasn't the board pushing it. It was a facilitator that got us together, and it culminated in identifying our goals, our long-term goals, 3 to 5 year goals that we wanted to achieve. And then more exciting from that was at the Q4 meeting, the board actually identified our top 5 priorities. And these are the things, the strategies that we are working on right now, and we intend to finish. And they include modernizing the Appraisal Institute's education and delivery system and products. The second one will be modernizing our technology, such as social media and communication methods, and a review of our website. The third would be to develop a plan to recruit and retain Appraisal Institute professionals. The fourth will be to implement the practical applications of real estate appraisal program, commonly known as PAREA. And the fifth will be to develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion action plan. Now, that's 5 things. They really kind of mirror our goals. And what's really exciting about this is we've already started work on these. We're putting our efforts into nothing but the top 5 priorities. It's so easy for an organization to do what we just did. I've read the 4Ds, the 4 degrees of excellence, and it's a book on actually strategic planning. And everybody thought that the hardest part was done by getting our plan put together and agreeing on it. But really, the hardest part is now. We have to focus on the plan and finish it. And
the execution part is always
it. And so our board is already probably getting a little tired of me focusing on nothing but getting our goals and strategies finished. And in order to do that, we really have to change. It's a cultural shift at our board level and our committee level. We have to be able to say no. And what we'll say no to are all the great ideas that come up every day. But we have to be able to say no to those as we focus on finishing at least one of our top 5 or 2 or 3. As soon as we can finish a top 5, which will come soon, sooner than later, the board's going to taste some success, and it should fuel itself, because once you start being successful as a team, you start getting more interested, more buy-in, and everybody wants more success. So it's really exciting time. My goal literally for this year is to guide the board through this process and try to get them to stick to nothing but our strategic strategies. We have to culturally shift from a management board, which is getting into a lot of different things that really don't do a whole lot for the organization as far as moving it forward. And we've got to think and act like true strategic board, and that's where we're headed. So my job, number one, is to do that this year.
Fantastic. So one of those top 5 was your diversity program. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. Yeah. Well, so this is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan. We already have some diversity efforts going on within the Appraisal Institute. Most recently, we have the Appraisal Diversity Initiative, ADI, and that's a partnership between Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Appraisal Institute, and the National Urban League. Chase Bank thought so highly of this concept that they committed $3 million to the effort, $1 million a year over the next 3 years. And what this program, how it's working is in October, the National Urban League held a symposium for minorities and women interested in getting into the profession. And they had 100 folks show up, and 35 were awarded the grants, the initial grants. The grants are coming out of the Appraisal Institute Education and Relief Fund, so they're being managed there. The grants get them their initial state licensing education paid for. They can use them to buy materials, the appraisal textbook, and things like that. And it's a first step towards licensure for them in the process. As long as they stay in the program, they can continue to move forward with grants. So essentially, it's a scholarship to get them through the licensing program. We also have within the Appraisal Institute, we have our Appraisal Institute Education and Relief Fund, and that's been available for scholarships for minorities, women, and folks that want to get into the profession. So that's a source of ADI that we've had trying to improve our diversity over the past couple of years. And more recently, the plan now is the board approved a Women's Initiative Committee about 3 years ago, and that's a place for the women in our organization to have an effort and a place for them. And now what this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan is going to do is it's truly going to help us set up our umbrella of diversity initiatives within our organization. And it's going to properly identify our needs and how we can go about making our organization more diverse and inclusive. So we're excited about that. It's a kind of an accelerated process. We hope to have a plan in place, maybe Q3, which would be awesome. We just appointed the action plan members to it, so they're off and running.
All right. Tell me though, and because I'm seeing a lot of efforts around, well, there's lots of barriers, as you know, for minority and women. It's not just getting the education. Is the Institute going to be matching those 35 candidates with a supervisor?
So that's an interesting question. The 35 individuals will take their first 45-day package of education, assuming that they take the Appraisal Institute education, which is what they'll take. Then they'll have some first touches there. The PREA program that I alluded to earlier, Practical Application for Real Estate Appraisal Experience, that is in process right now. The Appraisal Institute was awarded a $500,000 grant to write and produce the PREA program. It's designed to be a robust case study, for lack of a better word, that will take an individual through the entire real estate appraisal process for a residential house. And if they get through it, they're going to demonstrate they have the initial skill set to be able to appraise a house. Within that, it's heavily, as it's designed, heavily with the use of mentors. And so we already have our our residential appraisal project team wrapped within the Appraisal Institute, they are already organizing and identifying our SRA designated members who will mentor these folks coming through the PAREA program. Gotcha. So at the end of the day, the folks that intuitively come through ADI and then get into the PAREA program, they'll be highly trained when they're ready to get out on the back end of the licensing process, which is great because that's what they need. You know, it should foster a place for them to get through the process quicker, and maybe some of the barriers that have been in place might not be there for them through PAREA.
Outstanding. Jody, let's, if you'll excuse us for a minute, we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Awesome.
The Appraisal Institute offers a wide array of affiliations, from the candidate for designation and the practicing affiliate statuses to designated membership and student affiliation. Whether you're a lawyer, banker, assessor, graduate student, or certified appraiser, the Appraisal Institute is the premier global professional association among a myriad of professionals either directly or indirectly connected to the appraisal industry. Become a member today or find more info at appraisalinstitute.org.
You want to talk about your personal agenda is really to shepherd the strategic plan through. I mean, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and you know, it's my job is to preside over the board of directors. So, you know, I'd like to think that I could snap my fingers or wave a wand and get things done, but more than anything else, I have to equip the board with all the information they need to make the right decisions. And so this year we're moving to a strategic board. We are a strategic board. We decided that back in May. So it's different. So we're having to address some things, like we got our board meeting coming up in Q1, and there's some things kind of business as usual that have popped up where I'm having to kind of address the board about, hey, you know, we got to remember what our focus is. We won't, if we do this is going to delay the completion of this. And so we don't want to be the same old board that has 5 more board initiatives that kind of mire in the muck and get done, but they don't get done quickly and something else piles on top and we can't get it finished. So yeah, that's really priority 1 for me, is making sure that I can help the board and myself work through this cultural shift. It's all new to everybody, me included. But I do have some other personal kind of goals as far as what I would like to see the Appraisal Institute and where they are. One of them is messaging, better communication. I'm a big team guy. I try to teach leadership. I've been well taught in leadership. I can get along with anybody. I officiated high school football for 30 years, so screaming at me won't work. Ask my wife about that. There's a different way to get to me, and yelling at me is not it. But so I have kind of a unique personality because I can listen and will listen. I have a calming influence, and I can work through things. Generally, when folks call me up mad or upset, I'll call them back. I know they're going to be upset, but when we finish the conversation, it's really kind of in a better place. They appreciate that it's all calmed down. We talked about it. I listened. I respected what they have to say. And at the end of the day, we may agree to disagree, but that's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean I don't like you. It's just that we just couldn't find common ground.
Most people just want to be heard, and it sounds like, yeah, you take the time to listen and let people vent. And
yep. A lot of communication. So I'm not afraid of a tough conversation. So there are plenty out there. Really don't need to go looking for them.
We've definitely been in some interesting times. And of course, we're, just getting off this year with the report out of the CLEAR report for the subcommittee on a review of USPAP and the foundation. And then Fannie Mae just launched, I don't even know if you've seen it yet, Jody, just at the end of last week, their study of racial bias.
Yep.
And then we've yet to have the Pave Report come out, which I presume is going to be out any minute. Do you have any thoughts on, or do you care to speculate on where do you think Pave's going to come down?
Well, I can't really speculate because I don't know. I will tell you that I was in a meeting in December. I was in DC with Bill Garber, who heads up our GRC office, government relations office in Washington. And we met with a couple of the Pave folks. And we had arranged for them to do a drive-by with an SRA member in DC. That member was training her son as an appraiser. So they arrived and she was going through what she would do pre-inspection, just setting up the file, getting to know the property internally. And then they rode with them to the property and they watched them go around it, measure it, go through it. They went back to her office and watched her counsel him as to, okay, this is what we're looking for with comparables and all the way through the process. That was extremely helpful for them. We spent a lot of time trying to educate these folks on what appraisers really do. And then that's really worked out well because in every conversation we've had, the folks that we're talking to better understand what we really do. And I think in a roundabout way, they're discovering that maybe there's more to it than just the appraiser and, just running amok out there. The studies, there are all these reports of appraiser bias and things like that, but we don't have enough information to adequately study them and see what might have really gone on. It's aggravating to our membership a little bit that we can't speak about those. We have now assembled a project team that has studied the various reports put out. They've studied the Brookings Institute, Dr. Perry's report. They've studied the other ones, Corver Glenn. They've studied the Freddie Mac report. They studied the AIE report. And they also are going now to take a look at the Fannie Mae report. It's interesting because the Freddie Mac report's the first one that came out with the actual appraisal data. So they took a look at it from an interesting angle, meeting the contract price. And consistently, the difference was whites in a white neighborhood, their contracts were not being met, something around 5 or 6%. And in the black neighborhood, the contracts weren't being met 12%. And I believe in the brown neighborhoods, the contracts weren't being met like 14 or 16%. So there's a difference in the percentage of time, the amount that the contracts are met. There was also a disparity in the location of the comparables. In the white neighborhoods, they went maybe double the distance to find comparables, whereas in the brown and black neighborhoods, they pretty much stayed close, about half the distance for the comparable selection. So that showed up some things there. And then the Fannie Mae study, interestingly, it's based on appraisals. They took a different slant. They looked at it from the perspective of refinances and comparing the consistent conclusions to the AVMs, and were they proportionally higher in white neighborhoods than in black neighborhoods. That showed that there really wasn't undervaluation going on. What that showed is that in the white neighborhoods, there was suggested some undervaluation compared to the overvaluation compared to the AVMs that's going on. And interestingly, they looked at neighborhoods where there were majority or 50% black or white were living, or a little more black. And the refinances of the white homeowners seemed to be valued higher than the black homeowners, kind of a percentage-wise, which suggested that maybe there's overvaluation in those. But there's some reasons for that they're going to further explore. They're thinking maybe there was some renovation work going on. They're not sure, though. But that was this came out 2 days ago, so it's kind of
Well,
new.
I know.
But it's interesting that they are using appraisals, which is the best part, because this is the first time somebody's really used actual appraisals and they can kind of track what's going on. So that's good. That was actually kind of a positive, because it didn't show the same thing the other studies were certainly suggesting, which I thought was kind of a positive, just interesting aspect of that study as well. And it's hard, and we're committed as the Appraisal Institute. We're committed to diversity. We're committed to training our folks to recognize bias and to keep unconscious bias out of the appraisals, understand what it is, get it out of there, recognize it. We're also trying to educate our folks on the history. How did we get here? What went on 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago between the National Association of Realtors and the appraisers and all of the redlining that went on and restrictive covenants and things in deeds. I think it's helpful if every appraiser really understands what happened way back when to put it in context of the concern today. And
No, that history was interesting to me because I wasn't, but I did get a little lost in the weeds in the report, in the legal. I struggled with the legality section.
Yeah, and Pave's going to come out, we hear, in a week or so, maybe. And that should be pretty impactful. And remember the FA study, the CLEAR study that you referenced. That was with the appraisal subcommittee. So that was kind of looking at the appraisal foundation as well. Really, in that one, the most glaring thing that came out of that report, because they looked at the legalities and the processes and the qualifications of appraising, and they took it from that end. And the most telling thing for appraisers coming out of that was their wanting to allow the third-party borrower to have some sort of the appraiser's liable to them as well.
Well, let's break, and when we come back, let's talk about that, because that one makes me a little more than a little nervous. So,
me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jim, take it away.
An accurate appraisal is only as good as the data you collect, especially when it comes to measuring GLA. Right from the homeowner's smartphone, Remote Val uses advanced property scanning and LiDAR to generate exterior room sketches with GLA dimensions. Testing shows Remote Val is accurate within 2 inches when compared to standard tape and laser measurements. Remote Val is fast, easy to use, and completely free for appraisers. To see a demo of Remote Val in action, visit incenteram.com.
All right, Jody, let's talk about that topic of whether or not the borrower should be an intended user. And that one, in fact, I think I came up out of my chair when I was reading it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's very concerning. It's always been the adage that despite what you might have in your report, you can get sued. It doesn't matter if you've got disclaimers, inappropriate liability, and things like citing the intended user properly. You can still get sued, but that might help you get out of a lawsuit depending on the nature of the complaint and who it is and things like that. This concept, of opening it up to the third party, it could arm the third party user, with the ability to, I don't want to say come after appraisers, but it certainly takes away that wall of liability. I made a comment to the Pave folks when I was there, and they were talking about, what can we do with this? What can we do with that? And I referenced it like this. I said, look, we know it's difficult to get into the business now. It's not easy. And so we're looking for ways to make this attractive for young folks to want to get in as a profession. I said, but if we start doing things or requiring things of them that's distasteful, onerous, or, could put them in a perilous position, they're not going to want to do this. So we have to be careful about what we change.
Of the unintended consequences of adding additional liability. And just as a practical matter, you can't serve two masters.
That's right.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have in the appraisal process is we really don't give the appraiser the appropriate cover to tell the truth. If they report that the property is in really bad condition and factually it's in bad condition, the lender will put pressure on the appraiser to not be so straightforward and in fact be misleading about the condition of the property because they want it to be eligible for sale to the GSEs. And so if now I can't tell the truth, I mean, the homeowner's already getting a copy, but if, let's just use a terrible example of I have a hoarder house and let's say it's not habitable. And if I'm making a statement that I don't believe this house is fit for human habitation, that borrower is A, going to be angry, and B, be angry enough to hire an attorney, because now I've just insulted them, where I'm just trying to protect the interests of my client, the lender.
Right. Yeah. And, it's semantics. It's funny because I've been doing this a long time. And just recently, we had a lender reach out to us and suggest that we make sure we don't have these flag words in our area analyses anymore, like highly desirable, convenient to, and things that could be considered, just inappropriate in today's world, suggesting bias. And so that, to your point, that's Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, or C1, C2, C3, C4 with the coding now, instead of saying good, very good, poor, fair. And so, if you call something a C4, I think that pretty much explains that it's a C4. But a C4 might get you out of the box a little easier than saying poor.
Right.
And so, to your point, nobody wants to insult a homeowner. I'll tell you one nice thing about technology is a camera can take 1,000 pictures, and you can stick those in a file. So pictures can save an appraiser a lot of heartache if you take pictures of the unusual. It's hard when you got pictures of, a hole in the roof or a heat and air unit that's not in place, something like that, from a liability standpoint. But getting to the third party liability is tough.
I'm a big fan of transparency, but when it comes to the homeowner, I would much prefer and I would love to see the development of a summary of salient facts and conclusions. And that's all that the borrower sees. I don't think the 1004 report was written with the intention of being consumed by a borrower. Heck, with the UAD overlays, I can't hardly read an appraisal report. So I think we need to rethink that whole borrower process.
And
anyway,
that's just an observation that came out. The big push is hybrids now, desktop hybrid, so the appraiser doesn't see the house. They're not influenced by anybody at the house. Now, of course, when it's for sales purposes, they may or may not see a realtor or an owner at a house. They certainly likely haven't come across the buyer at all, so they don't know that. But then when you're doing a refinance, you certainly likely are meeting the borrower who's letting you in the house. So, it seems to me like the push and the buzz has been, with a lot of these studies, more reliance on a hybrid where someone does the inspection and someone sits at their desk and does the appraisal. So that connection's not made. But there's nothing like the gold standard, and that's an appraiser that gets to drive in the neighborhood, pull into the driveway, get out, really learn the property, touch and feel it. And nothing will beat that.
I'm with you on that. I think condition is an incredibly important component of the appraisal process. And I think the appraiser needs to be the one that's really one of the major components of an appraisal, in my personal opinion. But
yeah, mine too. And the gold standard is the best, and that's the argument against the AVMs. And just it's interesting because there's a push to the AVMs, but they want to further enhance the use of the AVM somehow, which I don't understand. But I can tell you, the best thing that happened to appraisers in the profession here lately was Zillow's news in the fourth quarter last year, which shed the light that whole organization was admitting how difficult it was to actually
predict value, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so we'll leave that there, but it's just an interesting observation, and the timing of it really was appropriate while all these people that are making these decisions, you got the GSEs doing it, you got regulators doing it, you have the foundation, the ASC weighing in, you have the Biden administration weighing in, and then there are folks like us that are really understand what the appraiser does, and our voice is they're seeking us out, but I just hope that they're listening.
Well, it's going to be an interesting year, Jody. So you're at the helm. So we'll check in with you later in the year and see how you're doing on your strategic plan. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And in fact, I'm going to invite you or someone on your team back when you finish analyzing all those studies and can give us the Reader's Digest version. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, actually, we talked about that today because we kind of got a summary. And so we talked about next steps, and we're going to present it to our board first, and then we'll decide where we're going to go with it after that. So yeah, check with me after the Q1 meeting. I might have a little more direction on that as to kind of where we're going with it, things like that. And thank you very much for reaching out to me. I love touching membership. I love touching people in the profession. This is what it's all about. And you know, we got to push the word out for the appraisers across in the whole profession, not just the Appraisal Institute. So that's my goal.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you again, Jody.
Okay. Anytime. Thank you.
Looking for better turn times, the ability to automate routine tasks and stay in compliance with your appraisal management processes? Evo, state-of-the-art appraisal management technology for residential and commercial real estate lenders and AMCs, was built with the user in mind. Evo streamlines the appraisal experience with configurable workflow designs that automate 100% of routine tasks, alert you on the way, and give you powerful reports to make timely decisions. It's the only platform in the market with total customizations out of the box without IT development intervention. Find out more at globaldms.com or call 877-866-2747. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Jody. We appreciate the input, and interesting to see where the Appraisal Institute's headed for the year of your term. Thanks again to our sponsors for helping us put these together. If you have an idea for a future Buzzcast or would like to be included, reach out to us at info@appraisalbuzz.com. Thanks and have a great day.